Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win. We're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we're taking a look at the Armor of Akkhan, which has been horribly nerfed, completely reworked. Let's get into it. Two-piece bonus. Judgment has no cooldown and gains the effect of every ruin. Four-piece bonus. Attacks from Phalanx Avatars reduce the cooldown of Akkhan's champion by 0.5 seconds and also apply Condemn when attacking enemies that are affected by Judgment. Six-piece bonus while Akkhan's champion is active. You deal 15,000% or 1,500% increased damage and take 50% less damage. So what does this mean? Basically, you no longer can use Bombardment Crusader, and Armor of Akkhan now works exclusively with Judgment and the Phalanx Avatars as well as Condemn. So we're mostly going to be using, as you see here, a full set of Armor of Akkhan. However, for the boots as well as the belt, we are going to be using Captain Crimson because it goes with just about everything. Two-piece bonus, 6,000 life per second. Reduces cooldown of all skills by 20%. Reduces all resource costs by 20%. Three-piece bonus, damage dealt increased by the percentage of cooldown reduction. Damage taken is reduced by the amount of resource cost reduction that you have. Also, we're going to be using here for the shoulder and the bracers, the gold's set. So two-piece, reduced damage taken by 15%. Increased damage dealt by 30%. Three-piece bonus, minus 30 damage from elite. Plus 30 damage to elite enemies. So that's why we run it. For the necklace, you have to run Talisman of Akkhan in this particular slot. So make sure you try to get as best of a roll as you possibly can here. For the shield, and we'll talk about that in a second, but for the rings, convention elements, Eternal Union, you must run Eternal Union here. Basically what this says is that Phalanx, bowmen, and bodyguards remain indefinitely. So you definitely want to run that. For the weapons, Blade of Prophecy, to Condemn enemies also trigger Condemn's explosion, and the damage of Condemn is increased by 100%. Also, you want Freddy's Wrath, which basically means Condemn has no cooldown and has the damage increased by a certain percentage. I think the maximum, if I remember correctly, is up to 50%, if I'm not mistaken. So for the skills, Slash Carve is the way you want to go, but you're never really going to use that for this build. Judgment, Deliberation, but it really doesn't matter because you get all the ruins anyway. Condemn, Unleash, you must run Condemn on this build. You're never going to really click this, but you need it so that you have a target of Condemns for the Phalanx Avatars to use. Akkhan's Champion Prophet is still the way to go. Laws of Valor, Unstoppable Force is the other thing that you want to use. Phalanx, you could use Bowman, which is probably the recommended version to go with, or Bodyguard. I recommend Bowman. Bowman's probably the best that you can get. So for the passives, here we have Long Arm of the Law, Heavenly Strength, Lord Commander, as well as Finery. For the Kanai's Cube, Unrelenting Phalanx is what you want to use here. Warhelm of Khosir, and a Ring of Royal Grandeur. That way we can get the set piece bonuses of our Armor of Akkhan. Now, as for my Paragon Points, as you see here, this is what I have. If you're playing Season, you're not going to have as much strength as I have, as you have to grind up. For the follower, Broken Crown, Flavor of Time, Nemesis Bracers is my suggestion. Everything else on here is nice to have, but not necessary. However, I would definitely highly recommend that you get yourself a Broken Crown, Flavor of Time, Nemesis Bracers. It just cuts down your clear time significantly because of the amount of extra skills that you get on your particular armor. Now, for the purpose of this particular demonstration showcase, I'm going to show you a Greater of 60, which is Torment 13 difficulty, as well as a Torment 16, Greater Rift 80. So basically, it's Torment 16 plus to show you how this armor does. Now, keep in mind, most people say that this is a little bit of a buff and a rework. It is a rework. I would not really consider this a buff. It's a very clunky type of build, and I'm going to give a disclaimer right now. If you are somebody that suffers from photosensitivity, or aka you get seizures from looking at bright flashing lights, this is probably the part where you're going to want to click away, because this armor has a lot of flashing lights and everything of the sort. So that's my disclaimer right away. So if you're very photosensitive and everything of the sort, please be advised that there's a lot of flashing lights going on the screen. This even gives me a little bit of a headache, and I'm not photosensitive and everything of the sort. So when you get into the Greater Rift, the first thing that you're going to want to do is obviously cast your Phalanx Avatars. Then from there, you want to go Akkhan's Champion. Then from there, every target that you see, you're going to cast Judgment. Every time you cast a Judgment on a target, your Phalanx Avatars will fire off their arrows and fire off condemns. So that's basically how this armor works. So during all this thing that you're doing in terms of damage rotation, you have to keep an eye on your Akkhan's champion. Whenever it's available from cooldown, you're going to want to click it again, as well as your Laws of Valor. And then another thing that you're going to want to have to get used to is re-summoning your Phalanx Avatars, because although they do follow you around, they are a bit slow, so you really have to reposition them by casting them again in order to get more bang for your buck with this build. Now keep in mind, this is basically now a pet build for all intents and purposes, so the Crusader class never had a pet build necessarily that was usable, and they basically reworked the Armor of Akkhan to be a pet build. Now in terms of optimization, what should we be going for with this particular set armor? First and foremost, on your helm, I would recommend crit hit chance 6.0%. On your gloves, I would recommend crit hit chance 6.0%, crit hit damage 50%, as well as attack speed no less than 6.0%, but preferably 8.0%. Those stats will be able to help you clear greater rifts. It's the difference whether you do 10 more or not without proper optimization of legendary gems and everything of sorts. So I definitely recommend in your benefit to get that stuff. And then from there are things that you should prioritize, definitely because the Crusader relies on strength and everything of the sort. You want to get the maximum roll of strength wherever you can on all pieces of your gear. You want to max out your strength because strength is very, very important for the Crusader class. The other thing that you definitely should prioritize is, because we're using Captain Crimson, we need to get cooldown reduction wherever possible. So cooldown reduction 8.0% is going to be very, very important for this build. The more cooldown reduction we have on pieces of gear, the more damage that we deal. So we want to deal out the maximum amount of damage possible. So 8.0% or higher cooldown reduction wherever you can put it on your gear. Now, also because we're using Captain Crimson, it's very important to have resource cost reduction 8.0% or higher depending on the piece of the gear. The more resource cost reduction we have, the less damage that is dealt to us, which is very, very important for this particular build. Then from there are things that we should be looking for in terms of optimization. Well, recommendation would be anywhere that you can power up your Phalanx Avatars by 15%, definitely do so because you want to give them a little bit more damage. Anywhere that you can power up your Condemn by 15%, definitely make sure to do so. The reason for that is because when your Phalanx Avatars do cast Condemn, they are using it based on your Condemn. So the more Condemn damage that you have, the more damage they are able to dish out. From there, also, I think it would be in your benefit to get Area of Effect 15% or higher possible wherever you can fit it into your particular build. The reason for that is they'll just give you a higher casting area for the Judgment, so you can hit things a little bit further than you normally would, and then the Condemns will go off a little bit further as well. So all these little things will help synergize with this particular build. For the Rift Guardians, very simple. Make sure you have the Phalanx Avatars and you have your Akkhan's champion already active, and then you simply cast the Judgment. On the lower level Greater Rifts, you probably are going to be able to one-shot most enemies this way. Higher Greater Rifts, it's going to take a little bit longer. For Legendary Gems, you want Enforcer Gem, because keep in mind the Bowmen are now considered pets, the Phalanx Avatar, so you definitely want to have Enforcer Max. Get the gem as high as possible as you can. You want a Bane of the Stricken, because those Condemns are going to go off multiple times as they're firing off arrows. And you also want a Bane of the Trap, arguably the best gem that you could possibly have, because it does automatically cast slow when you get it to level 25. This was a 3-minute and 32-second clear time, Greater Rift 60, which is Torment 13 difficulty. So, it's not bad, but it's kind of clunky in my personal opinion. Okay, so this is going to be a Greater Rift 80. Same strategy as before. When you get into the Greater Rift, cast your Akkhan's champion, then cast your Phalanx Avatar, then basically cast Judgment on various targets. Your Phalanx Avatars will fire off arrows, which hopefully will then be actually hitting with Condemn. Unfortunately, as you can see here, we're going to have to lure this enemy out into the open, because unfortunately it's just hiding in between the portal and we can't really do damage, so we're going to have to move back here. That's a funny little bit of a glitch you can see here. Now, keep in mind, people are probably going to be asking, what about Bombardment Crusader? Is it dead? Well, the Armor of Akkhan version is definitely, because now we no longer get the benefits of the 4-piece and 2-piece bonus in particular, and it won't synergize very well now with the Thorns and the Invoker. So what should we be doing? Okay, do you want to run Bombardment Crusader? You are going to have to use the Thorns of the Invoker set armor, which I will be talking about further down the line in Season 27 of Diablo 3. Ironically, because now Bombardment Crusader has been significantly nerfed, and I don't personally feel like the Condemned Armor of Akkhan is going to be able to perform very well on high tiers of Greater Rift, just based on the fact that the Phalanx Avatars have a tendency to have a mind of their own. Ironically, I would think probably your best bet for the Crusader is to go back to, ironically, Valor Satyr, aka the Valor Armor with the Fist of the Heavens and the Heaven's Fury skills in particular, which I will be covering in the future when I go back to S-tier builds. Unfortunately, because of this particular build, it's not really, it's somewhere around, I would say, lower A tier, some people consider it, but I would think it would be probably about B+ tier. The problem really with it is just the fact that, again, you have to keep constantly resummoning your Phalanx Avatars to reposition them, which is a bit annoying as you're trying to go higher up in the Greater Rift because you really don't want to. Some people are going to be asking why we don't have Baneful Remnant as for our weapon, because the fact of the matter is I did various different playtesting with this particular armor, and ironically, it didn't work in our benefit. Believe it or not, because although we were constantly casting Phalanx Avatars that could fire off a lot of condemns and everything of the sort, we actually lost a lot of damage because we weren't using the weapons to power up condemn. So, unless you want a slower build that's going to take a lot longer, which isn't very efficient for farming or going higher up in the Greater Rifts, in my personal opinion, that's why we don't particularly use it. I would say this is the stronger variation to use. If you go the other way with Baneful Remnant, it's not going to really work out with you. And if you try to take off the shield that you're using to, you will get less Phalanx Avatars overall. So I don't really think that that's the best way to go. But again, keep in mind that with all guides that I have on this channel, it is a suggestion, a recommendation. That's all it is. There's various different ways that you can play any particular armor, various different ways that you can set up your armor. It's all a matter of your personal playtesting. There is a perfect example, guys, though, of what I was talking about. How the Phalanx Avatars tend to have a mind of their own. So there's one of the things that you're going to have to keep an eye on. Now, in terms of further optimization, what should we be doing? Obviously, every piece of your gear you want Ancient Legendary or Primal Ancient Legendary. Ancient Legendary are gold borders, Primal Ancient Legendary are red borders. In order to get a Primal Ancient Legendary, if you're playing a seasonal character, what you're going to have to do is clear a Greater of 70 solo, and then you have a chance for Primal Ancient Legendaries to drop. If you're playing a non-seasonal character, any non-seasonal character that has cleared a Greater of 70 will allow all other characters on the non-seasonal character's account to be able to access Primal Ancient Legendary drop. So keep that in mind. Any non-seasonal character you have, as long as you've had one non-seasonal character that's cleared Greater of 70 solo, will be able to give you access to Primal Ancient Legendary drops. Now, this is not the starter set for the Crusader. Starter set for this particular season is the Roland's Legacy set armor, which I will be talking about later next week, and I'll show you a build as to that. Roland's Legacy is significantly weaker than this particular build, in my particular opinion. Really, you want to go with Valor Satyr if you really want a very good Crusader build for this particular season. It's very unfortunate that Bombardment Crusader got nerfed the way it did, because it was a really fun armor. I understand that they wanted to give this armor its own unique identity. Usually when Blizzard says that, the reason for that is that armor is overperforming in a certain manner and they want to kind of string it in. And when you really think about it, people are using Invoker pieces with Armor of Akkhan, and really we're not focusing so much on using Phalanx and everything of the sort. That makes sense. They had to rework it to give its own identity, but at the same time, it also kills one of the S-tier builds that, well, I had a lot of fun using it in particular, but, you know, it's necessary for the health of the game. Now, in terms of probably the best armors you should be using, Talraja, Tragul's Avatar, those are very, very strong builds for this particular season, as well as the Bones of Rothman, Army of the Dead build as well. That's a very, very, very strong armor as well, but particularly one of the strongest builds is going to be the Wave of Light Monk, which I will be talking about that, which is the Legacy of Dreams Wave of Light Monk build. I'll be talking about that next week, as that's going to be probably the best and strongest armor of this particular season, just because it can do a lot of great things, and because of the seasonal 27 thing as well, to be able to get a lot of information out of that, a lot of strength. Okay, so that was a Greater Rift 80 Guardian. Same strategy as before. Obviously, you make sure you have your Phalanx Avatars somewhere near you. Make sure your Rockroach Champion up, and then cast the Judgment. You could even hold in the Judgment if you want, a whole bunch of condemns are going to go off all at the same time. And it's going to pop because of the Bane and Stricken gem that we have, as well as Bane and Trap going off. Those things in conjunction of constant attack error, if you want to start, it's going to pop. High Greater Rift Guardian. With full optimization, where you have all pieces of your gear augmented with gems that are level 80 to, I don't know, 130 in value, you should be able to get somewhere into the Greater Rift 130. This is going to struggle higher up to be able to do it solo. In a group of 4, you could potentially do a Greater Rift 150, but this is a very slow armor. And most groups that are doing Greater Rift 150s are going for things that are able to attack super fast and speed through things, so chances are you're going to get booted from a lot of random rooms using this particular build, because it is a little bit slower when you compare it to some of the upper echelon builds. Alright, that was Greater Rift 80, 5 minute and 38 second clear time. Full optimization could probably bring it down to about 3 to 4 minutes, roughly. So that's pretty much going to do it for today's Diablo 3 video. As always, a like on this video is greatly appreciated. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, definitely consider doing so, as it helps the channel grow. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll see you for the next Diablo 3 video. Till next time.